Hello and good afternoon. We're going to get started in just another minute or so. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just another minute. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, afternoon, wherever you are tuning in. My name is Blair Corcoran de Castillo, and I lead the policy team at Opportunity at Work. And we are excited to be launching our first webinar as part of the Hub. Today's session is about advancing skills-based hiring using data and insights. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. We will have time at the end to answer questions, so please feel free to share any questions you may have throughout the presentation using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Our staff and panelists will do their best to answer throughout, and at the end, we will have some time for some live Q&A to answer your questions. All right, let's do this. So today is all about advancing skills-based hiring using data and insights. This is our agenda for our time together. We're going to quickly introduce you to the STARS Public Sector Hub for those of you that may not be familiar, as this series is a core part of it. Then we're going to introduce you to StarSite. It is formerly known as StellarSite. And it is a data dashboard that Opportunity at Work has put together, bringing some of the latest and greatest data from public and private data sets to help you understand STARS and your labor, the labor market talent in your area. Then we are so grateful to have Glenn Cora from Brookings Metro with us to share some use cases where she has used our data and made compelling cases about how to take action with government leaders like yourselves. And at the end, we will share a template that Opportunity at Work has put together that we've tried. It's tried and true and tested with others to help you, take some of the data that you can find about your communities within StarSite and use it to make a compelling narrative to drive action in your communities and through your workforce strategies. Then we will, of course, have some time to answer your questions and to talk about next steps. So with that, for those of you that are new to Opportunity at Work, we are a nonprofit social enterprise that is focused on rewiring the labor market for a group of individuals that we refer to lovingly as STARS. That acronym stands for Skilled Through Alternative Routes. So these are folks that have built skills in a variety of different places: community college, military service, boot camps, workforce training programs. They just don't have a degree. And there are over 70 million STARS in our workforce today, and they have been a vital part of our public sector workforce. There's over 9 million STARS in federal, state, and local workforces today. And we are here to share a little bit more about how you can use our data to help you tap into this, too underutilized talent that exists within your communities and your states. This webinar series is a part of our STARS Public Sector Hub. The STARS Public Sector Hub is basically a digital resource hub. So it is a website that has resources, but it is also a learning community. with many of you all. So this is the first in a series of public webinars that we will be offering. We also can provide higher levels of service. We can do that through providing analytics and insights, narrative support, and then through us and our partners, we'll be providing research, resources, technical assistance, and of course, a platform for community. If you haven't already signed up, there's a link here for how you can do that. But without further ado, I'd love to turn it over to Dion, who will share a little bit more about this series, why we've started it, and what its focus will be. Thanks all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dion Sugrum. I'm a senior manager here at Opportunity at Work. If we can go to the next slide. Here we go. Just one moment. Right. So thank you, Blair, for that awesome overview of the STARS Public Sector Hub. I'm going to speak a little bit about what community is as being part of the hub. And as Blair said, if you've signed up to the hub, you're joining this webinar, you are part of our community. And we're building this group of public sector leaders and workforce practitioners so that we and they can together connect, learn, and build a network as we all learn how to advance skills-based hiring and activate STARS talent within your organizations and in your networks. As part of the community, we have been thinking about offering a series of different opportunities to learn and engage with each other. We have planned a series of regular webinars, office hours where you can come with your questions and ask them to subject matter experts, and planning informal community gatherings for you to be able to learn more about skills-based hiring, to share learnings, to meet each other, and to build that community. One of the core parts of this really is for you to be able to be leaders and practitioners that are engaging with each other, and for us to build a community that responds to your needs and interests. Throughout this webinar, throughout our engagements, through polls, through surveys, through conversations with you, we're going to be trying to learn and continue to learn about what your needs are and to be able to provide programming that meets those needs. This webinar series comes out of some of the conversations that we've been having with public sector leaders about what are their core needs, what are the challenges they're experiencing with their workforce planning and with talent planning, and specifically within skills-based hiring. This graphic here on the left is a survey that we did to analyze and understand what are the major strengths and major weaknesses in terms of skills-based hiring within some of the folks that we surveyed in the public sector. We found that there are many areas where there are needs and where support is needed, but one of them is to be able to provide more resources and understanding and community around creating a skills-based culture within your organization. How do you understand where STARS are in your organization? How do you identify occupations where STARS can be plugged into your organization? How to educate the people you work with in your leadership on skills-based hiring, and how to create buy-in and ultimately drive toward changing your practices that you can incorporate STARS and activate STARS talent. As you mentioned, we've planned a series of webinars, so please screenshot this slide. This is our working calendar of events. Today, we're talking about advancing skills-based hiring using data analytics. Next month, we're actually having an office hours with some of our subject matter experts where you can come with some of the questions that you're going to pop up during today's webinar and ask them one-to-one, and also meet others who are part of the community. Later on in the year, we're planning engagements where you'll be able to hear from members of the federal government for how they have implemented skills-based hiring. You'll be able to attend office hours with them, ask detailed questions, kind of be able to learn from them. And at the end of the year, we'll bring in some of the members of a cohort of state leaders that are working together to advance skills-based hiring within their states. And we're going to elevate them to our community platform so we can hear from them what are their experiences in real time making some of these changes. So next, enough with us kind of talking at you. We want to gather some of learn a little bit more about what are the challenges you're experiencing. So we're going to do a fun poll. So if we could take down the screen share. And I'm going to share my screen here. And so you should be seeing a poll. And the question is, what are some of your most pressing challenges in advancing skills-based hiring at your organization? So to join the poll, you can either use your cell phones and highlight, put your cameras over the QR code, and that'll take you into the poll. You can also go to menti.com and type in the code 27142652, and that'll also bring you into the poll. And I believe we're putting the link to it into the chat. So to get us started, please just take a few minutes, enter the poll, and start thinking about entering your responses for what are some of the challenges you're experiencing in advancing skills-based hiring in your work. And we'll take a few minutes to kind of think and enter in your thoughts. Awesome. Thank you. Resistance to change. Yes, we've heard that a lot. Measuring success, job descriptions, how to assess skills, assessing skill levels, hiring practices, education, value proposition, tracking progress. Oops. I prematurely ended the presentation. Let's see if we go back. Okay, so sorry about that. Please continue to enter in your responses, but just kind of at a high level, I saw a lot of responses about tracking progress, communication, metrics, job descriptions. These are really meaty and heady problems that we've heard that many of our practitioners have experienced, and that we're trying to design this webinar and resources that kind of meets those needs and questions. One of our kind of core value propositions and ways in which we can believe we can support you in some of those issues and is through data and analytics. So today we'll be hearing a little bit from my colleague Melinda, who will share the Starsight tool. We'll hear from Glencora about how she's used Starsight and other data to make the case for STARS and highlight other issues and challenges with the organizations that she's worked with. And then we're going to end with a deck where you can use data to tell the story about STARS and about how STARS can support your talent needs. So with that, Melinda.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Melinda Venable, and I am the Program Manager for Decision Support Tools at Opportunity at Work. I'm excited to introduce to you Starsight, formerly known as StellarSight, our revolutionary tool for understanding the labor market's impact on STARS. Let's dive in and see how Starsight can transform your awareness. Starsight is a dynamic dashboard that empowers you to navigate the labor market landscape. It synthesizes data from leading sources, including the Census Bureau, American Community Survey, Lightcast, and Opportunity's very own unique data set, the STAR Mobility Data Model. Starsight helps to visualize STAR concentration by region, historical career transitions, top skills for specific occupations, and the potential impact of eliminating degree requirements for jobs. Charmaine, can you stop sharing so that I can share my screen, please? All right, let's jump into Starsight. So after you log in, here you'll see this Explore page for Starsight. Starsight allows users the ability to explore and get insights into the talent landscape, to compare and discover skills across jobs, and to assess and review job requirements. The maps found on this page help to identify areas with high STAR density, assess income disparities related to race and educational attainment, identify geographies with diverse workers, and explore in-demand jobs that provide career mobility within the region. With an overview of STAR's demographics on the right, information can be received from a national level down to a metro area. And users are able to find STARS in the desired region, view demographic and skills diversity, and locate where STARS work today. By clicking on a state, the information on the right panel updates to that region's workforce data. Let's use Ohio as an example. As you can see, as I clicked on Ohio, I am now able to see the total workforce or people within the workforce, the percentage of stars, the work status, the race and ethnicity breakdown, as well as income levels and their genders. You also have the ability to dive deeper into the state's data by looking at counties or metro areas. Once I click on the state map, all of the information is anchored for the next 2 pages for that state. So here we are looking at Ohio workers and stars. You'll also notice that you can look into the different metro areas and compare the Delta data for the metro area that you're hovering or you select. In this bottom demographic, you're also able to see the breakdown of stars by race and ethnicity. Here you can see the percentage of stars that is race and ethnicity, whether they're forming stars, which we define as stars who can see smaller wage gains through limited employment pathways, rising stars, which we define as stars who have several pathways into higher paying occupation, and shining stars, stars in high wage roles today. At the bottom, you're able to see in-demand roles that can offer mobility for stars in the state of Ohio. By toggling this button, state employers have the opportunity to see which roles they offer that are top for stars. They're able to determine the job titles, how many open roles there are today, the percentage of stars in the role, and then the percentage of job descriptions currently in the market that do not require a degree requirement. As we move on to the compare page, the compare dashboard explores transferable skills between jobs, helps identify which jobs to source star talent from, and enables discovery pathways for mobility within an organization across the region by finding adjacent roles with skill overlap. The dashboard can be used to expand the talent pool by finding jobs where stars excel, viewing pathways for upward mobility, and identifying transferable skills. The search box at the top allows you to search for a role type and then view skills and other data for that role. Selecting a role instantly updates the displays, revealing the total regional workforce in that or similar roles and highlighting how many of those workers are stars. Let's say you're interested in opening up opportunities for stars in an HR specialist role. You can either scroll through the list of preloaded occupations or type in human resources to pull up the data for that specific role. We're going to look at human resources specialists. As you can see, currently in the state of Ohio, there are 40,128 workers. 15,468 of those are stars. This information is important as we've had conversation with public and private sector employers. We found that this is helpful to understand as sometimes organizations think they may be the first to give stars access to certain jobs. Our research has shown that there are stars in every job in the labor market. This chart here can show and support expanding a search by offering the top alternative job roles available in the area in which you have identified. It also shows you the top employers for those jobs. If an employer is struggling to create job titles that resonate with candidates, this chart can help identify job titles that may gain better traction with candidates. When searching for stars to hire for a role, this chart will help identify other roles where stars may already develop the skills needed. It also gives a breakdown of the demographics within each of the roles as well. Use these companion charts at the bottom of the compare page to learn more about the pathways workers are taking to transition into new roles. Compare skills gaps between transition roles and gain insight into potential wage gains. Using a selected job as the point of origination, as you can see, our human resources specialist role, and a transitional role, this chart shows the estimated number of workers transitioning from one to the other, the wage levels between roles to demonstrate the increased earning potential for stars. So for a human resource specialist, sourcing jobs for a human resource specialist may include wholesale and retail buyers, customer service representatives, social workers, human resources assistants, and so on and so forth. This is explaining that these transitions are taking place to date, and most of these transitions have skills overlap that are successfully matched to the skills needed to become a human resource specialist. Further down the transition pipeline, you'll see that there is destination jobs. With these destination jobs, a user is able to understand that not only having the sourcing of the jobs to the left and being given the opportunity to obtain a human resources specialist role, candidates also have the opportunity to expand on their skills and move forward in their career path by establishing career roles in these additional places. So management analysts, as well as human resource specialists that are compliance officers, managers and others, and human resource specialists that are cost estimators. This chart on the right establishes the skills that are required for the human resources specialist role, and it shows you how closely overlapped the skills for the other job that you have selected are. Here we are looking at the skills that are needed for a wholesale and retail buyer and the skills needed for a human resource specialist. The wholesale and retail buyer skills are indicated in the purple webbing, and the human resources specialists are indicated in the yellow webbing. As you can see, there's a lot of skills overlap that exists between the two roles. If we click another one of our sourcing job roles, this information updates, giving us the skills overlap in the for the two roles that we have selected. Finally, on the assess page, when connecting with stars in the candidate pipeline begins with improving job listings to meet star candidate criteria, the assess dashboard provides tools to analyze how role requirements can impact the size of the talent pool for skilled workers. This chart is extremely helpful when a user is trying to understand how removing degree requirements and other skills requirements may have impact to the job pool. So if you were to look at this chart here on the left, you can see that typically an associate's degree is required for human resource specialist roles. If we remove the associate's degree requirement down to a high school or GED requirement and update our talent pool, the chart on the right will then show you how much greater the talent pool becomes when you remove the degree requirement. So originally, the talent pool was 189,884 candidates that are available with the associate's degree and the skills for a human resource specialist. But if we remove that degree requirement down to a high school education or a GED, then the talent pool is increased to 396,089 candidates. At the bottom of the assess page, the skills chart shows the skills most commonly required for a selected role. This can be used to assess if a job posting supports skills-based hiring. It also can be utilized when organizations are struggling to find the skills that are needed in order to include in their job postings. And this shows kind of from the greatest to the smallest skill set that's needed in the job postings today, what skills can be included. That concludes the demo for Starsight, and I hope this has given you a glimpse into how Starsight can transform the way you understand the labor market and the role of stars. But this is just the beginning. We're committed to supporting you along the way. Join us for our office hours where you can dive deeper into Starsight's features, get personalized guidance, and learn strategies for using this tool to advocate for stars in your community. And I'm going to pass the presentation to Glencora.
Thanks, Melinda. Hi, everyone. My name is Glencora Haskins. I'm a research associate at Brookings Metro, where I work on the applied research team and collaborate with local leaders and community organizations to develop regional workforce and economic development solutions that we can scale nationally. So our team works closely with Opportunity at Work at every available opportunity, since we believe wholeheartedly that one of the clearest pathways for enhancing job quality and bolstering economic mobility is to make more jobs accessible to people without four-year degrees. So as our team's resident data wonk, I wanted to spend a couple of minutes describing how we've used Starsight's data as part of our work at Brookings across a variety of projects. So many of the examples that I'm going to show you in a moment are from an inclusive market assessment and industry cluster growth strategy that we've been working on in Greater Philadelphia in partnership with Pew Charitable Trusts. But to be clear, skills-based hiring is relevant in almost all of our work, so we draw on Starsight for insights in our Regional Inclusive Growth Practitioner Network that we run in partnership with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, as well as our Industrial Policy Development Initiative, Generative AI Research Program, and many others as well. So to begin, I want to talk about transition pathways, which are really the bedrock of conversations about skills-based hiring and rethinking degree requirements. On the slide is a visualization directly from Starsight for accounting and auditing clerks, which is what Opportunity at Work would call a gateway job, and Melinda showed on the data portal a few minutes ago. What we can see here is that workers who started as accounting and auditing clerks may have strong pathways into higher wage work as accountants and auditors, even though these clerkships do not typically require a college degree. So this would indicate a relatively high level of skill alignment between these positions and increases the potential that accounting and auditing clerkships may be good candidates for reduced degree requirements when their candidates have demonstrated skill competency and professional backgrounds. And so I want to link this to wage quality and economic mobility. As we can see here, understanding these transition pathways is really useful in understanding how occupational transition pathways open up better future earning potentials for workers and how that might vary between origin jobs that appear to have the same wages at the service level. So this example uses accounting clerks versus customer service representatives. And while the wage rates are relatively similar for these occupations, the ability to transition into accounting jobs means that higher earnings potential may be much greater for accounting clerks. And the other thing I want to emphasize here is that this data comes from Lightcast, not Starsight, but we wouldn't be able to understand the occupational mobility implications without the data I showed from Starsight on the previous slide and that Melinda showed earlier. So one huge advantage of having Starsight as a data resource is that it can be blended and braided with other labor market information to create a more comprehensive understanding of a regional economy. So as I mentioned before, Brookings has been doing a lot of work around the exposure of different workers and different occupations to generative AI, particularly with respect to automation and displacement. So this is an example of how we can link Starsight's occupational transition and skills data with other resources to gain a more comprehensive understanding of the labor market and better understand the risk of things like occupational displacement. And what this data shows is that accounting clerkships are disproportionately at risk of automation compared to higher level accounting jobs. And if these entry level jobs go away, so too does a very strong pathway for upward mobility among workers without a college degree. And so we can dig a little bit deeper into this by seeing why the displacement varies so much between entry-level clerks and higher-level accountants and auditors, despite being in the same occupational cluster. The top skill alignment between these positions is math, which is frequently referenced use case for things like ChatGPT when it isn't hallucinating. But importantly, if firms are deferring to tools like ChatGPT for mathematical tasks, there become fewer opportunities for workers to increase their skill breadth and skill depth in this field, which decreases their ability to move upward later in their careers. And this has huge implications for the ability of workers to do things like save for an emergency, start families, and build wealth. So less than 40% of accounting clerks earn a wage that can support a typical household in Greater Philadelphia. And workers earning lower wages in these positions may be more comfortable because they have smaller families and are earlier in their careers, but may rely on that upward mobility to buy a house or have a child as they grow older. And that mobility is degraded when the pathway to higher wage jobs like accounting disappears for workers that do not have a college degree. So what can we do about this? One thing we can do is expand talent pipelines and skill certifications to provide alternative pathways for workers without a college degree to obtain skills, to shield them from the disappearance of pathway jobs that would have previously allowed them to learn these skills. And these programs should be seen as a complement to the skills-based hiring strategies that Opportunity at Work champions, since we know that in many instances, degree requirements are relatively arbitrary and founded upon an inaccurate premise that degrees are the only ways that workers can obtain the knowledge and skills necessary to succeed in certain jobs. And lastly, Brookings recently completed a case study on the value of worker protections in this regard, since union representation and collective bargaining are a strong way of ensuring that employers that can create these types of pathways and do not retreat to previous hiring practices that are often exclusionary. And so I'll wrap up with this chart of showing what degree requirements look like for accounting jobs in the Greater Philadelphia 5-county region. And this data does come from Starsight, which allows you to filter this type of dynamic labor market counterfactual assessment by region, which is in many instances at the county level. And so this chart is put together in Excel, but to be clear, Opportunity at Work is a great resource beyond Starsight and is often available to help pull this type of data for you if it isn't immediately available on the platform. Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna. I sit on the policy team and work with so many of you in the public sector hub. One of the things that we love to do at Opportunity at Work is put together a deck and really work on the narrative that we're sharing when it comes to telling the story of STARS and what it looks like in the labor market, whether that's locally, regionally, or nationally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk us through what it looks like to through a deck that we've created that you can download from the Starsight website and from the Public Sector Hub, where you can start to create your own deck. So when you download the deck, can you go back, Glencora? I don't seem to have control. Thanks. One more, if you can. Okay, so when you download the deck, this is where you would start. It's really about activating untapped talent in your region. It's a template you can start to customize for your own needs, even with a opening slide that you can literally just write in your updated region so that it can be customized. Go to the next slide. The first couple slides, I put them all on here, and this is really about instructions about how to use the deck, the data that's available, and about the deck in general of how it's crafted. So that's all there. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Instead, I want to dig in more into what you can customize and how you can pull the data using the methods that Melinda walked us through earlier when using Starsight. Next slide. So the way we've crafted this template deck is to really go into 4 different sections. So one is about describing your region specific workforce needs. 2 is about the overall introduction to STARS. So that story that we tell you when we're talking about what do STARS look like nationally, and what is their experience in the labor market nationally. The 3rd section is really, again, this is where it gets really described to what is happening in your region. So who are STARS, where they live, what are the demographics around them, and so on. And then the last section is really set up for you to describe and to conclude your presentation with what are possible next steps or ways to engage or things you want, final remarks that you want your audience to take away from you. Next slide. So this would be the intro slide that you update, and the area that says region is where you would put in your area. So whether that is a city, county, state, or some other type of region. Next slide. Again, update here to describe your region's workforce needs. You would put in the title of your area. Next slide. What we put in here are this slide and the next slide are a few examples to give some context setting. So one of the things that we know is that oftentimes when you're working with an audience, it's easier if you give them a little context so that they can understand how did we get here? What has the labor market looked like? We use the example here of looking at the pre-pandemic workforce we use Philadelphia here. Honestly, this isn't coming from StarSite. You can really find the data that helps tell the story for your area best, but this is one that we thought had been really valuable when we'd been doing some work in the city of Philadelphia. Next slide. Again, because we wanted that context setting and we started with what the city of Philadelphia looked like beforehand, before the pandemic, we then wanted to also look at what effect the pandemic actually had in the city of Philadelphia. So that's where this this slide we created as well. Again, this is data that comes from different places. Here it comes from the Pew Charitable Trust, but you can really pull in data that you think is valuable to context set for your own region. Next slide. Next, we go into the overarching introduction to STARS. So a little bit of what we talked about earlier, what many of you already, especially if you're familiar with our work, have seen us demonstrate before. But this is a set of slides that really paints the picture of what it has looked like for STARS throughout the country. Next slide. So again, putting the first 4 slides in one together, it gives you and all of these are obviously broken out in the template, but it describes who are STARS and then what some of the challenges that they've faced. So how degree requirements, social networks, and misperceptions lead to a paper ceiling that STARS are having a hard time penetrating, as well as the inequality that has resulted because of the degree barrier that's placed on STARS. And then we round it out with talking about how, while race is one way you can see STARS really affected, it actually affects all demographic groups, whether it's veterans, disabled workers, and so on. Next slide. The next 4 set of slides are really focused on the skills of STARS. So it's really making the case that although STARS have skills, what they face is opportunity. It shows how you can look at their skills, how some of the work that we've done and that's available in StarSite shows their skills, what roles they can fit into, as well as, making the case that low wage does not mean low skill, and that we think there are 30 million STARS who are ready for higher wage work today. Next. The next is, this again is where we get into the specifics for your area. So we wanted to give it its own title page again. Next slide. And these are 2 images that you can pull directly from StarSite. one is on the left, you see the distribution of a local workforce, looking at total workforce and stars within that workforce, as well as the map image. Both of these, what we recommend you doing is actually screenshotting and then just replacing the images, as well as the top two titled lines that tell you how many stars are in your area and what percentage of the workforce that equals. Next slide. Again, going into some of that top line, what does that mean? Kind of demonstrated in another way. When you highlight the amount of stars in a city or municipality, and what that means, for Philadelphia specifically, 1.4 million in the greater Philadelphia area, and meaning about half the region's workforce. Another way to demonstrate. This slide as well, you would find similarly to what Melinda walked us through, but it shows the full diversity of the state workforce. And so you can pull these numbers straight from StarSite. And again, another screenshot that shows you the skill set of stars. So again, focusing on that rising star population as being the ones that we think have the skills today for higher paid work. But you see the forming stars on the left who have the opportunity for upskilling, and shining stars are those who are in the high wage roles already today. We recommend leaving a space for questions for individuals before you go on to your next final steps. But from here, I will pass it over.
Yeah, we'll now be taking questions. Turn over to you, Jalencia.
All righty. We had a couple questions that were answered in the chat, but I just want to ask them out loud in the group so that we can elevate the answers for everyone. There's one question from Alice Pritchard about the data definitions that we've referenced. I know Blair answered it already, but Blair, do you want to give us a little bit of voiceover on kind of where folks can find the definitions of the data and the data sources?
Absolutely. I think that that's a core thing to understand. So I think that was a great question, Alice. And I know, Nicole, you had a follow-up question about it as well. So what StarSite does is it pulls census data along with the American Community Survey with real-time labor market data that we pull from Lightcast. And it basically builds the visualizations that you see there on some of the core questions that we've received from public and private sector employers as they've gone across their journey with this. So it pulls out not all the data that we have on stars, but some of kind of like the most common related to where stars live and work, what types of jobs they have, who's currently employing them. And then on that second screen, it helps us think about, what are the different pathways for sourcing, what are the top skills, and then that final, it helps us think about what are the top 10 skills and how making decisions about what you put on your job description can either increase or decrease your available talent pool. But so we mix those two together through our star mobility data model is basically how that works.
We also had a question around what skills taxonomy we're using.
Yes. So the overarching skills taxonomy that we use is ONET, since it is the most comprehensive and has the most historical data to date. We do pull in Lightcast data around real-time live job descriptions. So we'll share what are some of the top skills in one visualization, but writ large, we use ONET. And that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics occupational classification codes.
Thanks, Blair. And then we also, of course, had questions on where can we find the deck. So we will share today's slide deck in a follow-up email after today's presentation. So be on the lookout for an email from us tomorrow. So we'll share the slides that we've presented to you all today, including the slides that Jenna mentioned, which is our narrative template deck. So that's the one that you can manipulate and input data from StarSite representative of your organization. So we'll follow up with all of those resources the narrative template deck is already on the Public Sector Hub website. So if you're browsing the resources section, you'll be able to find it there as well, but we'll make sure you have everything in one place. I think we've got a couple more questions coming in. And yes, please keep your questions coming in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and we can have you unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Okay, so we've got a question from Paige. The question is, if my state is missing a bunch of data, is it because they did not participate in any of the surveys, or was there just not a lot of census data?
I mean, Melinda and Cora could probably talk about this more eloquently than I, but there is more and less data that is collected by the American Community Survey and through the census annually. And so we provide what is provided publicly through those data sets. So that is why we have basically what is publicly available currently.
I can supplement a little bit. The American Community Survey, at least the 1-year sample, will provide information that you can report on jurisdictions with over 65,000 people a year. So the more that you drill into that by educational attainment and race, the sample gets smaller. So my belief is that the data that's shown here typically shows jurisdictions that can, one, be mapped to specific metro areas and counties, because the Census Bureau typically maps things to other statistical areas known as PUMAs, and also to have a sample size that can be reported accurately within the American Community Survey's 1-year sample.
Excellent, Cora. See, I knew it would be better coming from.
And then the next question we have is, will the data be updated on a regular basis, or is the data dynamic?
Melinda, it is updated on a regular basis. Could you speak to that?
Yes, so we update the data annually, and inside of StarSite, there is a tab where you can get more information about our data sources and how we use those data sources. And then it will also let you know what year in which the data sources are being pulled from. So some of them are from 2022, but for instance, our Lightcast data is updated for 2024. And so each different data set has a different year.
Okay. Is there a cost to using StarSite? I
Nope.
just want to share the exciting answer out loud. It's free for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Cora alluded to, and as Melinda may have shared, I mean, we do have a larger mobility model. We have more data about stars. We share some of that in our research reports, and we are happy to provide more than it exists on the website right now. What's on StarSite is kind of like the most commonly asked questions about stars and some of the most compelling insights that we've been, been asked for. But we do have other data. So if you have questions or you'd like to dig into your particular area a little bit more, reach out and we'd be happy to have that conversation.
We've got a question about any insights or any information we've learned so far as we've launched the Public Sector Hub. As we mentioned, this is our first webinar, and we are looking forward to expanding some more community gatherings and offerings and opportunities. You probably have heard about the Transformers in the Public Sector cohort. So that's another opportunity for folks to engage with the Hub. But anyone else from the team want to share anything else related to any insights or any info that we've gathered as we've launched the Hub?
Yeah, since the launch in May, which was just 2 months ago, almost literally, because it was a Thursday. So literally, not almost literally 2 months ago. We have tripled the number of members. We expected that the majority of our members would have been states because that's where we've worked the most and where we've been focusing a lot of our time. But we have a huge number of federal, state, and local, so city and county individuals who are involved as well. And so we're excitedly working with some of our partners to figure out how to make sure that we have programming that meets the needs of those different levels of government. So stay tuned for more from us and our partners, like the National League of Cities, National Association of Counties, and National Governors Association, as we think about how to best support, and the Partnership for Public Service and others who support the federal government, as we think about how best to support you all and give you forums to learn from and with one another. And let us know, Paige, if there are other types of information you're interested in. But yeah, this is the first in the series, and we had a lot of interest, like Jalencia said, in our cohorts from beyond states as well, from federal government and from cities and counties.
We have another question around the hub. Will there be opportunities for folks in the hub to work together or connect?
I can
Yes.
jump in here.
Yeah.
If that's okay, Blair. And absolutely, yes. Learning and connection is a huge part of how we're thinking about the hub and the services we'll offer to you. The next office hours will be part-time learning, part-time connecting, and a few other engagements throughout the year will be more about connection and information sharing and learning. But also, we want to learn from you about what are the best ways that you can learn and connect. So later today, after the webinar, we have a survey. Please, by email and conversation, let us know, like, what is the best way for you to have that opportunity to connect? Is it in person? Is it virtual? Is it by a platform or a forum? Is it in office hours? We're really open to shaping the types of connections that we offer through the hub, based on how we think our members will use it and most benefit from it.
We've got a few more minutes for questions before we wrap up with next steps. So if you have any additional questions, drop them in the chat or feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you. Any questions for Glencora or Jenna or Melinda? Questions about StarSide, about using the data, or about using our narrative template deck? Got one in. Brady asks, what strategies can you recommend for promoting and implementing skills-first hiring practices among local employers? Great question.
Glencora, do you want to share some of the work that you all have done?
Sure. So we've done a lot of work with organizations across the United States that have tight networks with private sector employers in their regional economies. So those would be chambers of commerce and other community organizations focused on the intersection of economic and workforce development. We focus a lot on network building to make sure that our private sector partners are communicating with each other about the skills and assessments that they're using to best find candidates that fit the requirements for their jobs if they're thinking about dropping to degree requirements. The other thing that we have noted is a big concern, or at least focus among our partners, is the ability to track metrics from the top down within organizations, because frequently organizations will, or firms will, attempt to implement skills-based hiring practices, but there's a large disconnect between senior level management and frontline management or employees within the company about how well those policies are being implemented. So surveys of large firms with different levels of managerial hierarchy, people at the top will typically think that they have quite good hiring practices and are doing well at following through on their commitments to skills-based hiring, but without metrics and tangible accountability systems designed to ensure that that reaches the actual hiring managers, these policies typically do not come to fruition, and you'll find that a very small share of employees are actually benefiting from the drops in degree requirements. So really facilitating networks and ensuring good accountability and metrics tracking are the ones that I would focus on.
That's awesome. Thank you, Glencora. And Brady, may I ask, was that for public or private? I was assuming private sector, but let us know if you meant also public. I could share some public too for those to complement what Glencora shared. What we've been hearing a lot about are the similar challenges that public sector leaders at the local level have been facing with a lot of in-demand jobs that are needed for operations to deliver on government services. And so how they're getting started is thinking about, you know, which jobs that are currently in demand that they need and have high vacancy rates might make sense for STARS that currently have degree requirements, and thinking about how to use their community networks, a lot of them like community-based organizations, to get out the word about where there are jobs that don't require degrees, what types of skills they're looking for, and that they're open for STARS. I think that's been really important in helping STARS see themselves in those roles, because I think what we've been hearing from STARS in some of our work with them is that just because they've heard about an executive order or legislation, they don't see much changing on job boards writ large. And so actually getting the word out in the community is kind of a huge piece of making sure that stars see themselves in the roles and know that they're actually open for them. And so we're seeing, especially at the local level, a lot of word of mouth, but also a lot of building networks among community-based organizations that may touch or reside in areas where stars live and work, which you can figure out from using that first page of Starsight. And with those great heat map, the more purple, the more stars you'll see living and working there, and getting out in the community so that they can. And I think what's made it possible too is just hearing from others, what they're doing, where their success has been, and making to shine a light on stars to share their own stories. Because I think, like Melinda shared, our research has shown that every single job in the labor market today has a star in them. I think some of us just may not know that they're stars, but all of us know a star in our lives. We may love them, work with them, live next door to them, et cetera. So I think shining a light on star stories is another way that employers have been able to make advances in skills-based hiring and make sure that socialize more. Okay,
As a quick
long answer.
supplement, one thing that we've been trying to encourage our network members and employers to rethink is putting recommended degree requirements on job postings rather than just dropping that altogether, simply because we've had some that are committed to dropping out the floor requirement to solicit more applications or broaden their application pool. But stars who have concerns or issues seeing them in positions that they might not have otherwise been qualified for due to those degree floors will frequently not apply or apply in lesser numbers to jobs that say that they still require a bachelor's degree or still prefer a bachelor's degree.
I love that point, Glencora, because stars will self-select out if they see like or with an educational equivalency. Those educational equivalencies actually have more of a screening out than screening in.
Great. We have time for this one last question in the chat before we move on to next steps. It's actually on the same point that you all were just talking about, but the question is, how do you handle jobs on ONET that speak to requiring significant preparation, or it specifically requires a 4-year degree if ONET is used for the skills taxonomy?
So I think the way we think about it is we use it for skills, not necessarily educational or preparation requirements. So I think like what we look at is that, and that's also why we're comparing it with Lightcast data to what are the most commonly used skills requested on jobs. And our research has been able to show us where they're like across ONET categories, where skills have and have not been, or jobs, sorry, have and have not been accessible regardless of degree. And so I think that that's more of how we're looking at it. We're not saying like if ONET's saying that like basically high preparation means a requirement for education, certain educational requirement, we're not looking at it from that. We're looking at literally the skills, not a bachelor's degree or that, and using those skills as kind of the markers. I think the other thing is just ONET is one taxonomy, and that's why we're trying to bring in other data here to get a sense for what else is happening in the labor market. Because as we all know, ONET's great, but it is one, not updated as often and still a little bit behind on traditional occupation. So we are trying to figure out where there are missing pieces and how to complement it. And we'd be happy to talk more about some of the data guidance in a follow-up conversation in office hours, actually, too. We can bring all the people who know all the data things there too. Amazing. All right. Well, I want to thank all of you, plus my team and Glencora, for sharing their time and expertise with us today. I think we have one last slide, which is basically next steps. And then as Dion shared, we're going to be collecting some information to you to make sure that this series can be helpful and learn more about what you want and need as we move forward. So what's going to happen next is that you're going to get an email blast with the resources from this webinar, which includes the video of this. It's going to include that template that Jenna walked through, and a companion guide, which includes talking points. We will also share with you kind of the help center and some additional resources that exist for Starsight. So as you use it, you can see where some of the ready-made resources and support is. We'll make sure that you have a link to the August 22nd office hours where you can ask questions. And in that email as well, so you're not going to want to miss this. It's going to include that juicy calendar of events that Dion mentioned. We've got lots coming up, and we want to know what else you need and would like and what would be helpful. So please do take that survey after the webinar because it'll help us make sure that we're being responsive to your needs. And finally, we do have a summer challenge because who doesn't love one? We've got a walking challenge right now at Opportunity at Work right now, which is just getting us all pumped up. But the other the other challenge we're excited about is this skills-based hiring one. We will offer 1 hour of additional advice outside of the office hours on any skills-based hiring topic of your choice if you try out Starsight and test out our narrative template deck and share some of your feedback on it. Let us know what worked, what's missing, what else you need at our next office hours. So if you try out Starsight and look at that template deck and can provide us some feedback on it at our next office hours, we would be happy to offer you another hour outside of that office hours of advice with subject matter experts and our partners and ourselves on some some skills-based hiring topic of your choice. So we hope that you will use these resources. You will let us know what else you need from the survey, and we're excited to hopefully see you in August. Thank you all for attending. Have a great rest of your day.